checkout at CVS sounds like a slot machine. I'm not joking. Like, slots can be problematic for me at times.
Honestly, so are you addicted to the self-checkout now?
No, but I wanted to get in my car and just open up the DK app to start playing slots. I'm telling you, it's like ding. I think the CVS self-checkout machines are the same maker, like whoever makes slot machines.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna end up in a situation where it's just like, well, do I play slots today or do I go buy bread? Like,
CVS.
Buy it, go put it in your car, walk back in, grab some milk, go through again.
I'm just gonna start getting cash back so that it looks like I won something when the bell goes off. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NBA strategy show. 9 games today. Much different look on this slate than we've seen yesterday on that 5-gamer. Adam and I broke it down in a deeper dive. Today's show, of course, presented by Prize Picks. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitter, joined by Adam Scher at Ship My Money DFS. He's feeling good this morning. Had a midnight workout last night. Thought that would be a good idea. Didn't fall asleep till what time you passed out at? 5?
4.
That's good. So it wasn't quite light out yet. How you feeling?
I feel tired. I don't feel too bad other than that, though.
That's all right. We got 9
I mean,
games.
on the scale of like the ways I feel for morning shows, sometimes I will gladly take tired over being out all night.
Yeah, you mean being hungover?
Yeah, my typical Monday.
It's funny. It's funny about this too, because whenever if I don't do it often anymore, like going out real late. Like during the beginning of COVID and stuff, though, we would just, it was all hell broke loose. But people would be like, I'd be out and I'm like, all right, I'm going home. And they go, hey, you work from home. What do you do? Like, what are you talking about? It's easy. Like, I'm not saying it's manual labor. Don't get me wrong. I much respect for that. But I'll tell you, wicked hangover, like the bad ones, and you have to do a show at 10 a.m. and talk for like the deeper dive for NFL, talk for 2 hours straight. That can be difficult when words won't come to you.
You know what can be difficult? Saturday morning shows with EMAC for like a
Come
year
on,
straight.
man. We love EMAC.
Yeah. He loved making that as miserable as possible because he knew I was hungover.
Right. He took joy in
no, he absolutely loved that.
We got ownership projections updated 3 seconds ago for those of you guys that are over at. Someone said our volume's low. I don't know if that's the case, Jacob. Let me see here. Let me see before we get going.
I turned mine up a little bit.
Did you? Well, it would be on the. I mean, I suppose you could just turn it up, but anyway. Appreciate you guys being with us. We just got. Yeah, people are saying that mics are low. We got 9 games to touch on. Ownership just updated. We got the boom bust. You know what? Forget about these guys. I don't know why I'm doing this to you. Producing his first show today, and I'm taking chat's word for it. Come on now. That's my
Sean
mistake.
V said sounds good, which I have no idea how to take that.
So it is low.
Yeah, it makes me feel like it's really low.
What's up, Sean V and everybody else here? Happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you're just walking in the door. Atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean of that stench. And subscribe to the channel. Also, listening after the fact, leave a comment down below. We try and read all of them at the very least, try and respond to them. And if you're listening in podcast form, leave a rating, a review. All that stuff's appreciated big time. Subscribe to the pod, tell your friends, and let's get into it. All right. So
shout out Jordan watching the strategy show at 7 a.m. his time.
The guy gets up at like 5 o'clock regardless. Pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah, I can't.
He was wasn't he producing your 9 a.m. show for NFL?
Yeah.
At 6 a.m.
Yeah.
He gets it done. But the nice thing is, like on a Sunday, he's done by 10 in the morning.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
I mean, West Coast time is the best for DFS in general. Like, I mean, so it sucks if you're doing morning stuff, but like for DFS, West Coast is the best because you're done at like 4.
Yeah. Or if you like work a 9 to 5, that's probably pretty tough.
A 9 to 5 on real person time.
If you work a 9 to 5 in California.
Why is that tough? That's what people do.
But how would you have time to get lineups in and everything? Like you're still.
Oh, you meant for DFS.
Yeah. I'm saying from a DFS perspective.
Yeah. That's true.
Anyway, 9 games. Tell you guys how to get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value. There's 2 ways to do it, as a matter of fact. Not 1, but 2. So it should cover every one of you who's looking to get your foot in the door, take advantage of ownership, player projections, all that good stuff. Matter of fact, knock it out of here right away. Prize Picks. If you haven't signed up, you already know what to do. Get your free month. Use the link in the description or use the link. And don't worry about that sidebar, Jacob. Just leave it. It's fine. Use the link. I'm taking this dude's job real tough today. Use the link in the description or the one that we can throw in the chat right now. Get up to $100 first match deposit bonus and the free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, not just basketball, but literally every single sport that we have here. Every sport, any contest you can find out there, we've got content for it, whether it's ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, you name it. All the projected data, the simulation tools, all of it. And you can get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on on top of that with the free month. Because it's a month, you can do the month of Fantasy Cruncher as well. Plus, win some money at Prize Picks where you're just building lineups with props. 5 of 5 hit, boom, 10xing. Yo, check Josh's picks out too. He's been throwing them on Twitter. 6 of 6 hit. You can mix any sport you want, 25x. And unlike traditional parlays, you hit 4 of 5. And another book, you get nothing back. Here at Prize Picks, you still 2x. You still make money back on 3 of 5. So a million different ways to do it. You're getting the $100 first match deposit bonus. You're getting the free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, every single thing we have on our site. And of course, you're playing on a site that's solid, that continues to grow. No sharks, no optimizers. Build the bankroll, sustain a bankroll, and make some money in the process, and use all of our tools in order to do that. So check it out. Prize Picks link in the description and in the chat. And don't worry, Richard, it's not available in Maryland, you say? Well, I'll give you one later that is. You can still get your free month. I got you. All right. Let's talk about this. Out of the gate, how about this game? Portland, why is a Memphis game at 7 p.m., by the way?
Is it on national TV?
It must be, right? It's just that it's usually Memphis is an 8 o'clock start time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just my guess is it's on national TV,
right?
And then there's a 10 o'clock game.
Kind of a fun game, though. You got Dame and you got Ja. And I was thinking about this before the show. Look at the guards, the point guards that we have today on this site. SGA, and just using DraftKings pricing here, 10-2. Steph Curry, 10-3 against Minnesota. SGA's against Houston. Ja's against Portland. Lillard's against Memphis, and what should be a high-scoring game. And then, of course, kind of the lone outlier here, Kyrie Irving in a tough matchup against Boston. But, man, there are some great spots for these starting point guards at the top tier, and 2 of them are in the first game we're talking about.
I mean, don't sleep on James Harden, Trae Young, De'Aaron Fox, and Chris Paul, too.
Oh, I'm not. I'm just saying those are only the 10K plus guys.
Right. Yeah. Point guard is loaded today.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and
like you said, other than Kyrie, they are all in. Well, I mean, Dame's not in a good spot either, but
it's a pace up spot at least,
right? That's just like it's easy to see Dame and Ja playing 1-on-1 for the entire fourth quarter.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, but I tell you what, though, I think my favorite out of all, Ja stands out. Just because, like, when you look at SGA, he has the second most 30-point games in the league this year, behind only Luka. But, like, where's the ceiling there? A 26% assist rate. And we can talk about this. Let's break this Portland-Memphis game down on both sides and just kind of dissect it. Ja has a 34% usage rate. He isn't shooting as well as SGA, but he has a 34% usage rate, 41% assist rate this year. So I think, isn't this kind of a give and take with some of these guys? Like, Ja clearly has the ceiling to go nuclear and break a slate, whereas SGA has just been wildly consistent all year. And then Damian Lillard has those monster blow-up games as well.
Yeah, clearly, huge upside for both of these guys. We also have a questionable Desmond Bane, which if he's out, makes Ja Morant look even better. If Bane's in, I think that SGA is the preferred option, but you're still going to want to get to Ja. If Bane's out, it moves Ja up enough to where he probably looks even better than SGA. One other thing to mention is we have seen increased playing time recently from Ja as well. The biggest knock on him for most of the season has been that Taylor Jenkins typically just doesn't play his starters the same minutes that other teams do. And even in competitive games, you run the risk of getting like 33 minutes from Morant. But last game, you got 40 plus. You've seen 35 to 36 a lot more recently as well. So I think expecting like 34 or 35 minutes is more reasonable now than it was earlier in the year. And again, if Bane's out. That makes it even, more likely you get a couple extra minutes and also certainly more production. So I think it's really difficult not to be very, very interested in Morant.
Yeah, I like John Morant a lot in this spot. Just the whole game in general. How about Jaren Jackson too, playing 38 minutes last game? I know, well aware that Clark was in foul trouble, but Jackson's, it was probably only 5 or 6 minutes that he played because Clark was in 5 or 6 additional minutes while Xavier Tillman was off the floor. What do you make of Jaren Jackson today? Just, the preeminent shot blocker in all of basketball alongside Nick Claxton.
Yeah, it was nice to see that happen just to know that it can. You're still projecting him for about 28 minutes. That's what you're seeing on most nights. And it covers the fact that you're going to have plenty of games where Jackson's in foul trouble as well. But it was good to see that they would do that. It's right up there with Morant playing 40 plus. You're not expecting to see it on any sort of a regular basis, but at least they let it happen. So that, certainly interesting to see as well. He's 7,100 on DraftKings. So I still think it's difficult to really build around him, but he does give you plenty of upside because of the blocks that he gets. There's just a ton of volatility there. He's pulling no ownership. So in large field tournaments, I get it, but it is, kind of difficult to prioritize that price tag. Desmond Bane, 7,500. If he's in, he looks okay. Obviously, if he's out, it makes Morant look better. It makes Dylan Brooks look better, but his price tag did jump. Brandon Clark at 6K, I still think is interesting. It's not the clear, just plug and play that it was in his previous starts, but he's still over a fantasy point per minute guy, averaging 27 to 28 minutes in his starts in a pretty decent spot with power forward eligibility. So still don't mind getting there, but again, clearly going to be more difficult than it was when he was 43 or 4,400.
Josh Hart, this happens frequently. A lot of ownership today. Not insane, but it's still up north of 20%. Pretty flat.
22% for Josh Hart on an 8 or a 9 game slate is borderline insane.
I guess you're right. Yeah, that's true. It's funny though, because it's just, he always seems to get some love. He's such a low volume shooter. You're relying, of course, on rebounds and him to rack up at least some peripheral stats, hopefully a couple of stocks. But he's as volatile as it gets, because you're never going to get there on volume alone. Like, he needs so many things to go differently. He's 5,100. He's been there. This is the 5th straight game that he's at 5,100. It should be a fast-paced, high-scoring game, pace-up spot for Portland. But and he should play, anywhere between 33 and 35 minutes. Is this someone you'd look to come underweight on if he is actually 22% owned?
Yeah, it's just really similar to, we've seen this on like every slate recently. And it's just because from a roster construction standpoint, you get such loaded center positions. You have so many good guards to pay up for that you just end up needing a small forward around 5K. And anybody that's likely to play, low to mid 30s is going to pull some ownership. So it's, you have a 12% chance of Hart being optimal, 22% projected ownership. I'm sure as we go through this slate, there's going to be other forward options in this price range where it's like, all right, he doesn't project quite as well as Josh Hart, but he's also getting, 1/5 the ownership. So he makes for a good pivot. Hart's going to be somebody that probably shows up in cash lineups, your optimal builds, but I would be looking to pivot away from him where I can, just because he's relatively unlikely to put up a score that you have to have.
Damian Lillard pulling 4% right now. Well, almost 5%. And Ja, we got it like 5% too. My God, dude. Let's see where, because we just got ownership. Where are the most popular semi-high end point guards coming from? It's like Fox and Chris Paul. None of these 10K guys are really getting a lot of ownership at all today, at least on our initial run.
Yeah, it's tough to get to much of anything else. Like, you have Dame in that price tier with all the other good guards. So he looks a little bit overpriced. If you want to get there in tournaments, sure, that Dame's capable of going nuts, but not a great matchup for him when you have these other guys in very, very good matchups. Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, both reasonably priced, but probably just not that necessary on this slate the way things look right now. We do have Grant in particular going under owned, 11% chance of being optimal, only 6% ownership. That's probably because of the Ford eligibility, whereas Simons only has a 7% chance of being optimal because there's such a high opportunity cost at guard. Nurkic, I think, is pretty difficult to get to here. He does always have a nice ceiling when he's 6,600, but you also have the opportunity cost at center. So I think it's kind of weird. Like, pricing on this game is, for the most part, just pretty efficient. So even though it's likely to be a fun game to watch and there's a lot of really, really good players in this game, I think it's going to be tough to get to a lot of them from a fantasy standpoint.
Let's talk about Orlando and Philly then. Orlando, 9.5-point dogs. Man, what an epic, disgusting meltdown by the Sixers the other day. Did you see that?
No.
Against the same.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see the game, but I know what you're talking about because Embiid started out on fire, and me and Josh were DMing each other like, all right, hopefully they finish off this blowout so that Embiid doesn't play the whole game. And then Embiid ends up playing the whole game. They lose, and he doesn't even have a good game because he just stopped doing anything.
Crazy. By the way, I just tossed let me see if this works. Might not, might be the wrong link. It doesn't work. I'll get the link for Prize Picks. I saw somebody ask. I'll get the link in Prize Picks. So into chat in a second. But yeah, it was brutal. Kind of interesting though, because Wendell Carter Jr. is dealing with that plantar fascia. Maybe they rest him for this game. Maybe it's more serious. If he doesn't play, I know it's not exactly a particularly great matchup, but doesn't Mo Wagner start to look really good at 3,900?
Either him or Bamba, whichever one starts.
And do you think Bamba would start, given how he's kind of fallen out of favor in Orlando?
I think they would go Wagner. But they probably go Wagner. Some chance they go Bol, but that would surprise me. Bamba's probably the second option. But either way, if Mo Wagner starts, he is center only on DraftKings, so not as easy to roster as he was earlier in the year when he was power forward. But at 3,900, he's going to look good. Obviously, there's foul risk, but he's a good point per minute guy. Bamba at 3K, if he starts, is going to look great. Even if Wagner starts, Bamba's still interesting in tournaments at 3K as the backup center. And as I was talking, I don't know if you'll even know, I think there's some history between Embiid and Wagner too, as far as Wagner perpetually pissing off Embiid whenever they play each other.
Yeah, there was that thing where Wagner stole Embiid's girl.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was talking about.
They were out at, I think it was a club, and Embiid goes to find her like, all right, let's go home. Finished up the Shirley Temples and walks outside, opens the door to the limo, and she's in there with Mo Wagner.
Yeah, completely naked.
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. They weren't watching YouTube. I'll tell you that much. That was, yeah. So I think ever since then, it's gotten out of control. By the way, did you see the thing with Arian Foster talking about the NFL being rigged?
No.
Oh, you have to. He was clearly being facetious. It was a setup. He was on one of the Barstool things, and they were saying how they would give him a script at the beginning of every season. And I'll send it to you because the quote tweets on that were it's peak Twitter. I'll have to show you guys.
I saw the Barstool headline about it being rigged, and I didn't even click it because I was just so tired of seeing dumb shit about it being rigged. I didn't know what the bit was though.
Yeah, it was a bit. It was a good one because they started relating it to other players. Like, here's their reaction when they got their script. There was a horrible one that was like, here's Tua trying to remember his lines for week 15 or something. And it was Kevin Hart going yeah, but I mean, that's wrong, but it's also fun.
Yeah, that's funny. But no, I think that there was when Wagner was on the Wizards, because Wagner's really good at drawing charges. And I vaguely remember him and Embiid just it just being a thing where the Wizards would go to Wagner. He would pick up 2 immediate offensive fouls on Embiid. Embiid would get pissed off, but it doesn't matter for DFS. If Carter's out, you're getting value at center from Orlando.
Didn't Wagner have that game in Washington where he hit 7 threes against the Sixers in the first half? You remember that?
I don't, but it's possible.
I thought it was. Yeah, here you go. Mo Wagner unnerved Joel Embiid. Orlando Magic. And this was just from a couple days ago. And Wagner had another good game. He had a solid game against the Sixers just 2 games ago. He's an interesting play today for sure. But that, of course, if Wendell Carter Jr. is out, then that makes things even more appealing. What about Banchero?
Yeah, I mean, so like if Carter is in, you're kind of just still getting, I think, the same Orlando stuff that we've seen. Banchero being the only guy pulling ownership. He's 6,700. He's still playing full minutes. He played like 36 minutes last game. We know the upside that he gives you, and that price tag just keeps falling. So he's going to look like a good play. Other than that, though, it's tough to prioritize much if Carter is in. Like, he would look okay at 5,900, probably playing around 30 minutes. Markelle Fultz at 5,800, playing 30 to 32 minutes. Going back to Philly, if you want to factor that in, I don't know if that makes him better or if he's going to forget he knows how to shoot. But, 5,800 at 3% ownership makes him a decent tournament play, but nothing that you're prioritizing. Franz Wagner's playing big minutes at 6,200. One interesting part of the rotation last game was that you did get up to like 20 minutes from Jalen Suggs, who's only 3,100, but you also only got like 10 minutes from Bol. So I don't think it's necessarily something that we see on a consistent basis. I think it's really, if Carter is in, the same like 4.5 guys with Banchero, Carter, Fultz, Wagner, and Anthony, where you can get to them in tournaments, but the only one that actually looks good and like somebody you're going to get a lot of is Banchero at 6,700. On
the other side with Philly, Joel Embiid once again questionable. I really thought that you could see him rested last game. He ended up playing. They got out to like a 27-5 lead or something insane. Found a way to cave. I don't anticipate that happening again today, but Joel Embiid, 15%. Aside from that, the rest of this Philly team is kind of pretty quiet right now on all of our projections.
Yeah, obviously a good matchup for him. 120 implied total for Philly as well. Also working in his favor is that you don't have the other pay-up options on this slate. You don't have Luka, you don't have Giannis, you don't have Jokic. Normally, those guys make it really tough to get to Embiid. Now, today, you do still have all of those point guards to pay up for that, are going to make it a little bit more difficult, and you have just good centers as usual, but it does make it a little bit easier not having those other pay-up options. We only saw 33 minutes from Embiid last game, which is mildly concerning because we've also seen James Harden's playing time come down a bit. So it makes me think that Doc Rivers might just be sort of pulling back a little bit on Harden and Embiid since, it's the regular season and doesn't really matter. But still, if you're going to get 33, 34 minutes from Embiid, he should have plenty of success here. It makes him look good. Beyond that, there's not a lot. If you want to play a 5% on James Harden in tournaments, fine. He's got about an 8% chance of being optimal. But, he's typically playing 34, 35 minutes these days. Harris at 6K. We know that he sees a big drop off in usage playing with Embiid and Harden. You're still going to get those games where he just kind of gets lucky. Also, if you're Sean V and you like revenge games, he is playing Orlando, but not any sort of a priority there. You're getting around 28 to 30 minutes from Maxey. Melton's playing anywhere between 22 and 32 at 5K, shooting guard, small forward. That is a spot where I think that's one guy you can pivot from Josh Hart. Like, Hart clearly projects better because you're projecting him for like 33, 34 minutes, and Melton you're projecting for probably 26, 27, but there's going to be some games where Melton plays 30 plus. He's only $100 less expensive. He's getting 1/20th the ownership. So that's one of, many guys where in an individual tournament lineup, you can go there and just hope that he beats out Josh Hart, but Hart still projects better.
So we get to Washington and Daniel Gafford's still questionable for this one. So we saw what it looked like with Porzingis back and Gafford out last game. Do you think it would just, if in the event that Gafford sits, you think it's just Kispert and then, Porzingis at the 5 and pretty much the same rotation, similar rotation, Taj getting all the backup minutes that we thought that we saw last game?
If Gafford's out?
If Gafford's out, yeah.
Yeah, I think we would get similar rotation. One note on the top, I have no idea if this game's even going to happen. Say that again? I have no idea if this game even plays. As of last night, Detroit was still stuck in Dallas more than 24 hours after their game against the Mavs. So
why? What happened?
Snowstorm, flight cancellations. They're just stuck in Dallas. So I don't know. I haven't checked this morning to see if that has been updated or if it's changed, but there is some chance we lose this game.
Interesting. I'm looking at it now. You would think it would be right there, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I actually went last night. I was going to bet the Washington line, but then I realized it was in Detroit and they're 6-point favorites, and I just don't trust Washington enough to do that. Yeah, I don't think I would either. But
Okay, well, let's just assume that it's going to happen. And if it does, there's a lot of good spots that we're going to be talking about on this slate. I don't think we have to dig too deep, but let's just assume, excuse me, that Gafford does play. If that's the case, it's tough to get to most of these guys on this team. Even though
it's just a bunch of
it's
just a bunch of decent tournament plays. Like, it's a good matchup. There is some decent pricing. I mean, 7,300 for Beal isn't bad, but you're just getting these like 30 to 32 minute rotations from him recently, which makes it difficult to trust him. In addition to, the usage coming down when Porzingis and Kuzma are both in. Porzingis at 9K is probably my favorite play from Washington. And right now he's only pulling 1.5% ownership, but he's got power forward eligibility. He's likely to give you 32 to 34 minutes. There's not going to be much resistance from this Detroit front court. So I think he looks good. Daniel Gafford, center only, if he is starting, likely playing, 25 minutes, give or take. Certainly has some upside here, but there's a million good centers. DeLon Wright and Monte Morris are both cheap, but also not very good from a fantasy standpoint. Kuzma at 8,700, 4% owned, sure, but I'm not getting excited about that. I really think Porzingis is probably the guy I get to the most if he's really going to be 1.5% owned.
How much more interest would you have in him if Gafford's out? Of course, Porzingis played 30 minutes last game. He got pulled with 2 minutes in a blowout. 5 blocks, though. Do you like him more at the 5 here enough to increase projection on him?
I don't think it matters too much. I'm going to double check right now if I can get it to load quickly, but I don't think it has too big of an impact on him. So overall this year, 1.27 DraftKings points per minute for Porzingis. If I take Gafford off, he gets to 1.3. So it shouldn't make too much of a difference for him.
Okay. And then somebody had mentioned Kispert as well. We'll hit on this real quick. Yeah. If Gafford's out and Kispert starts,
sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where he's I think he's a 42+% 3-point shooter, which is nice, but I don't think we can ignore the fact either that this guy has a 5.6% rebound rate, 6% assist rate, and a usage rate that sits at 13%, and he'd be contending with Beal and Porzingis in the starting lineup. Like, if you're not getting there on efficiency from Corey Kispert, you're probably not getting there at all.
Right. Like, he's a good 3-point shooter and he does literally nothing else. So it's just, you need him to shoot hot, and then you need him to just run into like extra rebounds or steals or whatever. He doesn't do a lot in the way of defensive stats either. 1 steal per 100 possessions, 0.2 blocks per 100 possessions. He has 5 blocks on the entire season. So yeah, I mean, it's a spot where he's always low owned for those reasons. He's a 0.6 fantasy point per minute guy. It's never like if you're playing a bunch of lineups, a starting Corey Kispert at close to minimum salary and no ownership is bad, because he does get opportunities. It's just that his role on this team, he's good in his role, but his role is literally just to shoot threes and then just get the hell out of the way.
Exactly. Let's talk about Detroit. And by the way, I found the link. It took me a second to get it. Link is in the description for Prize Picks for whoever asked earlier. Get the free month of Stokastic plus Platinum. Get the deposit bonus and use all of our tools to win over there. Over on the Detroit side of the ball, like you said, weird spot. All right, very simply, let's say the league tells them, hey, you're playing today, but they don't get back till, they're not back home until, now. I don't even know if they are back yet, but like, let's say they get back and all these travel concerns and everything that's gone to shit over the last 12 hours or whatever it is, 24 hours leading up to the game. Do you downgrade them at all, or do we just kind of play this one as we normally would?
So Detroit still has not left Dallas.
Really?
Yeah.
One of their it's almost 11 o'clock.
Yeah. So one of the beat writers 3 minutes ago said, for those asking, Detroit has still not yet left Dallas. Pistons are still scheduled to face the Wizards at 7 p.m. Eastern. They also lose an hour with the time difference.
There's no way they play.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised. But like, if they do, I have no idea how to quantify this. This is one of those spots where, like, people ask about, like back-to-backs, 3 and 4s, 5 and 7s, whatever it may be. And I personally, at least, don't have a good way to quantify it outside of just, the lines factor in heavily to projections. Right. But, I think like the best way that I have to factor in is, the total in this game probably drops just because you have a Detroit team fresh off of a plane. But, I don't know how to just be like, oh, well, I'm just not playing anybody from Detroit. I mean, I guess you could say that, but not the route that I would go. I just think that it's a situation where like I would certainly prefer that they had been in Detroit for the last 48 hours or whatever it is, 36. But you're still getting decent prices on these guys. Burks, if he starts, is at 5,100. Bogdanovich is at 6,400. Ivy's at 6,100. All three of those guys in particular, I think, look okay. 5,500 on Hayes is an interesting price tag. Came off the bench again last game, but did play like 27 or 28 minutes. Certainly a weird spot though, and like I wouldn't fault anybody if they just were like, yeah, I'm not doing it with Detroit. But, at the same time, it's not like it's a bad matchup. And I have no idea, exactly how much it impacts anything.
Yeah. And I don't, you're right. Bogdanovich, Burks, none are bad plays. But I don't think there's any spots here where like if it wasn't a situation where they're, stuck in Dallas, I don't think there's any guys where you're like, man, I can't believe like, all right, say you're not playing somebody from this team. Say you're just fading this team today. I don't think there's anyone on the team where you would go, God, this could really destroy me today.
Yeah, there's no like clear-cut top value where you're just like, right. Oh, cool, 40% of the field is going to smash me unless I'm right and Detroit just comes out flat.
Exactly.
Yeah, like there's guys here that certainly look good. I mean, this game has like a 238 total. Detroit's got a 116 implied total right now. Bogdanovich at 6,400 playing like 34 minutes looks good. So does Ivy. So does Burks. But yeah, you're not looking at any of them and like being truly terrified. One thing that actually, and I just thought of it, maybe one route you could go if you are really concerned about them. It's not to say like, oh, I'm going to drop their production or anything. But what if they just throw an extra guy into the rotation? Like, to just lower everybody's minutes. Like instead of getting 34, 35 from Bogdanovich, he plays 31, 32. Burks plays 28 instead of 30. Ivy plays 28 instead of 30. Kevin Knox plays, 10 to 12 instead of none or 2 or whatever. So like that would actually be my biggest concern is what if they just run a deeper rotation?
That's a good point. Yeah, that could definitely be the case. By the way, 2.5 hour nonstop flight from Dallas to Detroit. So even if let's say they departed it at 11, well, it would be 10, let's just say their time, 11, 12, 12:30, you get off the plane by 1, it's actually 2. That would be shocking if they played today.
Rick, I mean, at some point you get into a competitive disadvantage situation too, where the league just has to be like, yeah, we're not doing this.
By the way, I always thought that Detroit, I didn't know Detroit was on Eastern time. Like I know Chicago.
Yeah. So I know that it is, but I always get confused. When I read that tweet, I was just like, what do you mean they're losing an hour?
That's what I thought too. Like I actually looked at, for some reason, you just think of Detroit as like Chicago and not obviously not Chicago, but in the same conversation as those. Yeah. I did not know Detroit was Eastern time. I should have known though, because all Detroit games always start at 7 p.m. or 7:30.
Yeah. So I do it with Detroit. I just think of them. You know what it is Detroit always plays in the Central Division.
Exactly. Yeah. So most of their games are, an hour.
Well, behind. It's just, I just, like you said, in my head, it's just like, oh yeah, Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, they're all the same. Right. When Detroit's Eastern. And the other spot that gets me, even though I've been there multiple times, is Nashville is Central. And I just always think of it as East.
Yeah. Yeah. Who the hell knows anymore, man? But okay, we'll pay attention to this one. We'll keep moving though. Hit that thumbs up too. Almost at 100. We got 500 people watching. There are certainly 14 of you out there who are looking to better your lives by taking a single second and hitting that thumbs up button. Yesterday crushed 500. I think we hit 600 in the deeper dive because you guys are fantastic. But yeah, we'll get there. No problem. And we'll talk about Brooklyn and Boston here. All right.
Hang on a sec. I think it was Des Morris asked in chat about Denny. At 5,400, he's probably correctly priced. He's pretty tough to get to. He'll look a little bit better if Gafford is out, but at the very least, he's another, in large field tournaments. If you just throw him in instead of Hart in some lineups, that's fine. But I do think the price tag on him's gotten pretty much correct, where there's not a ton of leftover value there.
All right. Brooklyn 8-point dogs, 226.5 total. Kevin Durant, obviously still out. Ben Simmons out. TJ Warren out. So here we go, man. It's another spot where Kyrie, we talked about this right at the top of the show for anybody that's jumping in late. the guard position is absolutely loaded from like 8,500 and up, 10K and up. A lot of great matchups, or at least fast paced games. Even a lot of low ownership on these guys. Kyrie Irving, one of the few guys in not only a tough matchup but also a pace down spot against Boston. Do you agree with the 1.5% ownership that we're seeing on him right now?
I agree. He should be really low owned. I mean, if you want to argue that he should be like 3 or 4%, sure. But yeah, he's obviously good and just capable of going nuts in any matchup. But it's the biggest issue is that it's not like you just need him to beat SGA or you just need him to beat Durant. You need him to beat this whole group of guys, which just makes it a pretty low probability spot. He's got a 3% chance of being optimal, 1.5% ownership, clearly capable of putting you in a really good position in large field tournaments if he does just go out there and put up 70. But the matchup, the price tag being a little bit higher than all the other guards, the matchups that the other guards have, it just makes it a low probability play as good as he is.
All right. Well, at this point, I mean, it's Seth Curry who's going to benefit. Claxton's getting no ownership. It is a tough matchup. He's been a stud, but Brooklyn outs. So if you're just looking at aggregate ownership on this team, it is so incredibly low today against Boston. Seth Curry around 10%. I think that makes sense just given the injuries here, but man, this team's going to be pretty difficult to get to on a 9-gamer.
Yeah, I mean, Curry's the only guy pulling ownership, and he's 5K. You're likely getting 30 to 32 minutes with Simmons out, but you only have to go back one game to see Seth Curry start and play 22 minutes in that last game against the Lakers. So it's not like anything is guaranteed with him. If you want to get to some Claxton in tournaments, sure. You've been seeing big minutes from him. Didn't play as much last game, only playing 27, but he's played really well overall without Kevin Durant this year. Day'Ron Sharpe is the backup center right now, or at least has been. He played 20 minutes last game. Typically, though, you're only going to get, like 14 to 16. So he's 3,800. He's a good point per minute guy, but there's still a ton of risk there. I think this is a really tough team to get to.
How about on the other side with Boston, where you've got Marcus Smart continuing? He's out still. Robert Williams is questionable in this spot. But, I mean, this game in general is one where it certainly appears that you're not going to have a lot of this game. And even if you wanted to get over the field in some of these spots, you're going to have to do very little in order to do so, especially even with Boston too.
Yeah, and Robert Williams went through shoot around. We just got that news. So
okay, so
I assume he plays. If he plays at 5,500, interesting in tournaments just because, he's a good point per minute guy. He's cheap, but he's also center only on DraftKings. Jaylen Brown's probably my favorite guy to get to here at 9,200, shooting guard, small forward. Not a huge priority, but is projected to go a little bit under owned. Easy to fit into lineups. It's just that in a lot of lineups, you're going to want to just get Jaylen Brown up to like SGA for $1,000 more. And so that's why you're seeing a lack of ownership here, even though he's shooting guard, small forward. Tatum's really expensive. The ceiling is obviously there, but it's just tough to get to that price tag. Horford, White look okay, but again, there's just nothing that really stands out as a top option. But if you get to any of the starters in tournaments, I think that's fine, just as a way to be contrarian. But there's just nobody that I would expect to be building around.
Des Morris says he doesn't think he would date a 24-year-old because maturity matters. Pal, I'll believe it when I see it. Okay.
I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We all say that. I
don't say that. That's my preferred demographic.
All right. Well, he says that. I'm saying it's easy. It's easy to take that type of stand until, you're face to face with it. And then, your knees might buckle, pal. All right. Let's talk about.
I also have the emotional maturity of like a 22-year-old, so it helps.
Right. That's true. And you're single and you live in Baltimore, where apparently all of the bartenders around you are like 25 years old. So
all the bartenders at bars I go to are like 25 years old.
Right. I'm sure that's just, coincidental.
It's just the way things work. These things work out, man.
That's why you bought your apartment. All right. Let's talk about Golden State and Minnesota. Things should get interesting in some of these remaining games. Some really high totals, some really high implied totals. Before we do though, number one, I told you guys Prize Picks earlier, the free month. If Prize Picks isn't available, I forget who said it. He's like, dude, I'm in Maryland. Prize Picks isn't available to me. If you're in Maryland or any states where Prize Picks isn't available, guess what? Yes, Vic David said his bank account will buckle. If you're in any state where Prize Picks isn't available, BetMGM probably is. And honestly, this is just as sweet a spot as it is with Prize Picks because one, you only need 2 minutes of time. You sign up, takes 2 minutes. Using the link in the description, I'll throw the one in chat if you can't find the one in the description. Maybe you're on your phone. It's a pain in the ass. Either way, we'll get it to you in a second. That, you take 2 minutes, sign up, following those steps. Take $10, find it laying around somewhere. There's no doubt you've got it because it's going to be the best $10 you ever spent because you're getting a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, just like with Prize Picks. Every single tool on the site for every single sport, not just basketball, everything across the board, full calendar month. And you're getting the access to our premium Discord for the month as well. All the tools built by Alex Baker, awesome himself, managed by some of the best players out there. Sean's on DeColts, who just is constantly taking down NBA tournaments. And like I said, Alex Baker too. All of that. Just make a bet of $10 or more on whatever it is. Hell, you use, this is what I would say. This is my recommendation, right? You sign up and then you use Adam's video today. You're doing the video on OddsShopper, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Where he's taking on all of the best prop bets from our Bet Pro tool and injecting his thoughts as well. Take his top bet, throw it down. As soon as that bet settles, you're getting the free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, all of our tools, everything, right? Not only that though, but if your bet wins, you get paid out and you get the free month. If your bet loses, you still get the free month, but you're also getting first bet insurance up to $1,000. So if your bet is $10 and you lose, you get it back in bonus bets. If it's 100, you get it back in bonus bets if you lose, all the way up to $1,000. So you've been watching the Hall of Fame segment between the Deeper Dive Live Before Lock going, shit, man, I'm trying to get up there. I'm rocking the avatar. I haven't got there yet. I don't have a big enough bankroll, play big enough stakes to pay $120 a month. Now you don't need to. You need $2 and $10 to get in on that. Get yourself in the best position possible using these tools. And the truth is we want you to win. That's why you're getting the free month, well, on $10. And remember, must be 21 years or older to gamble. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call it. Text 1-800-GAMBLING. Boom. All right, let's keep this going. Golden State Warriors, Adam. Talk to me about this Warriors team today. Pretty fun matchup, I think. You know, you got Golden State. Now, it's a weird team because I think you and I talked about it the other day where everyone's just kind of like in that mid-range outside of Steph Curry. But here's another one. Curry, pretty decent matchup, 3% ownership today.
Yeah, it's similar to Dame. It's similar to Kyrie. It's clearly an appealing spot in that you're just going to be with 3% of the field if Steph Curry goes out there and knocks down 10 threes. But it's also a low probability spot because he just doesn't project quite as well as these other guys. 5% chance of being optimal, 3% ownership. Great way to differentiate within a given tournament lineup. But I still just think it'll be tough to like play a lot of him across all of your teams. So looks fine in that regard. The only guy that really stands out to me from this team is the only guy pulling ownership, Clay at 6,900, shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings, pulling 11% ownership because of how, you know, the positional flexibility he has. That's about in line with his optimal percentage. Other than that, Draymond, Andrew Wiggins, who's down to 5,900, they both look okay. But again, just another team that's really difficult to prioritize. Pricing today is pretty efficient. And so we're getting these games where like they're really, really appealing games, but it's just tough to really like a ton. We did get 32 minutes from Andrew Wiggins last game. That's noteworthy just because he's back to playing his normal minutes and his price is decreasing. So I think that's, you know, interesting to note. But other than that, I don't think there's a ton that stands out here either.
Neither do I. Well, I guess it gives us ample time then to break some of these other spots down, like Minnesota. Rudy Gobert finally paying off for those of you who had been, or, you know, to some extent, who had been, you know, pining away at that. Please give me a good Rudy Gobert game. He got a decent one. We have Jalen Noel at 21% today. I think that's probably a pretty good spot to start. And actually, matter of fact, he is one of the highest owned players that we have projected overall right now. You agree with that?
Who was that?
Jalen Noel. That can't be right?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, there's nobody.
I was trying to see. Do we have Russ? We have D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, there's nobody out right now that hasn't been out. I mean, I get it. He's 3,300 and, I guess you need value, but like, that's a weird one. He played
22 minutes.
He played 22 minutes last game, but like that, is it normal? Like
it's like his ceiling. If
right. Yeah.
Healthy.
I mean, you get plenty of games in the like mid-teens from him. If he gets 20, you're typically happy. I mean, it's the type of play where, one, I think that ownership is going to come down. But two, like when guys like that are 3-4% owned in large field tournaments, I'm interested just in trying to get lucky. But if he's gonna be 20% owned somehow, which I don't think he will, but if he's gonna be 20% owned somehow, like that's really easy to just not play him and hope he plays 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Plus, I would imagine this is our first run of ownership. Of course, they clear up throughout the day, but Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards is one of those guys that when he gets on a heater, it can go pretty well for you. And he has been crushing recently. I mean, he's on an absolute tear over his last 6 games, playing monster minutes. He's exorbitantly priced, though, is the thing. Like Anthony Edwards is up around 10K now.
Yeah, he's gotten very expensive. And I mean, he is playing really, really well.
Really well, yeah.
Yeah, either he's just playing above his head and he'll come back to earth, or he's taken a step forward as a player. And with as young as he is, I think it's pretty likely, at least in the middle, if not just him taking a step forward. But shooting guard, small forward's great. Nearly 10K just makes it really tough to get there. It's almost like we've seen with Lauri Markkanen for a lot of the year, where you can look and say like, yeah, damn, like this guy's playing great. Also, I just can't get to him at that price tag. And that's really, how I see it here with Edwards. It's just the positional eligibility makes him at least somewhat interesting, but it's still just gonna be really tough to pay that. Certainly interested in $7,100 D'Angelo Russell, $5,600 Kyle Anderson. Both of those guys look pretty good. You have Anderson pulling 16% ownership. Again, small forward, power forward. If he can avoid foul trouble, you're likely getting around 30 to 32 minutes. He's not a high usage guy, but he's an efficient shooter. He just does enough on the floor to still be a solid fantasy option. If Rudy Gobert plays, I mean, this is just, it's getting old. Whoever starts the center for Minnesota is a good play. Rudy Gobert is 6,800. Assuming he plays, you should be expecting 34 to 35 minutes. That's just what we're getting outside of that one game on the front end of the back-to-back the other day where he only played 31. But typically you're getting mid-30s from him. If he doesn't play, Naz Reid's price tag just keeps falling. Nathan Knight's 3K flat. Whoever starts the center for Minnesota is going to look good. I mean, Naz Reid's getting borderline playable in tournaments, even if Gobert's in. Like playing 16 to 20 minutes at 3,800 with power forward eligibility, 1% ownership. So like this is a spot where, and again, the Jalen Noel ownership I think is going to come down. But if Jalen Noel at 3,300 is actually 21% owned and Naz Reid at 38 is 1% owned, I would rather play Naz Reid. They're like the same play.
That's actually a good, yeah. Give me the guy that's going to actually have opportunities, even if his minutes are limited, to rack up some pretty decent peripherals.
Yeah, I mean, they both, assuming Gobert is in, they both project to play somewhere between 16 and 20 minutes. They're both good point per minute guys. Noel's 0.97 for the year. Reid's 1.15. Reid's a little bit more expensive. To me, they're like the exact same play. And that means that neither one of them should be popular, and they're just large field dice rolls. But if for whatever reason you like have to get to one of these guys and Noel's pulling all the ownership, just go to Reid.
Yeah, absolutely. Top play from this game right now.
Whoever's playing center for Minnesota.
Okay. I threw the BetMGM link in chat for you guys. And yeah, who asked that? Piper, was it? Pipper? I can't find it. Oh yeah, it was a super chat. Pipper. Thanks, man. As a new DFS player, do you think your NBA lineup generator tool will be enough to become profitable over a month? What's the best way to use it? That's the hope, man. Yeah, I mean, that's why we build it for whether you're new or whether you don't have time. That's why we have the lineup generator. Yeah, absolutely. And my recommendation when you're talking about best way to use it, and Adam, you could probably speak to this as well from the lineup generator standpoint, because you can discard lineups, you can keep lineups, you can do swaps and everything. I think too that there's no real right way to use like Cruncher or a lineup generator, right? Like it has to be something you have to play around with it and find what works best for you.
Yeah, exactly. And like lineup generator, you don't have like the same level of customization, but you still are able to discard lineups. You just know that the quality of the lineup that is just given to you in the lineup generator is going to be better than, whatever, than like a random lineup from Fantasy Cruncher. If you just turn up the randomness and run it. So like, that's nice. But yeah, it's still, being able to discard lineups and go through and still get something that like looks like a lineup that you want to play, but you can also very easily see how it rates in terms of projection, in terms of ownership.
For sure. Yeah. And again, I'll get the link for that. You get 50, actually the link's in the description, Pipper. You'll see it says 50% off lineup generator. You get 50% off your first week. So that's down there as well. But yeah, it's a fucking sick tool, dude. It's a sick tool. It's like $4.40 for the first week. It's real sick. Plan B Smoothies with a free super chat, 13-month member. Happy birthday, Loughran, forever my DFS daddy. That made me uncomfortable, but thanks, brother. Not my birthday, March 26th. Put it in your calendar. Boy's going to be 36 years old. We're getting old, man.
God damn.
Yeah, dude. I feel great, though. Let me tell you. I think I'm in the best shape of my life, dude. Really been getting it done.
I do know how you spent the years that most people are in the best shape of their life, so I believe that.
That was by far the worst shape of my life. Yeah. Spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, no question. But yeah, feeling good, man. Feeling good. All right. What are we on to? Sacramento, San Antonio? Let's do it. Sacramento Kings, they have an implied total of 126 today against this just rock bottom Spurs team that, we frequently have to discuss. But Sacramento, I'm just curious, like, if you are on board with the ownership here, not that this isn't a good spot, obviously, right? Not that it's not as good a matchup as you're going to get, not that it's not a fast-paced game with an elevated total sitting at 243.5. But like, when you're talking about a very popular Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter and De'Aaron Fox, who has been good, but should we be looking for good pivots off of these guys, or should we just kind of eat this chalk with Barnes, Fox, Huerter, and the like?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. Like, across 150 lineups, I'd be expecting to get to plenty of these guys. They're all five of the starters are pulling between 10 and 20% ownership right now on DraftKings. I don't think any of that's crazy, but when you look at it individually, Fox going a little bit overowned, 19% ownership, 12% chance of being optimal. Same for Barnes, 19% ownership, 16% chance of being optimal, 17% ownership for Huerter, 15% chance of being optimal. So nothing where it's glaring, Keegan, 10% ownership, 4% chance of being optimal, but nothing that really is glaring in terms of like, why is this guy this popular? But within an individual lineup, sure, you have some chalky options elsewhere. Do you want to find a lower owned small forward option than 20% owned Harrison Barnes? Yeah, probably. But across 150 lineups, I'd expect to be coming in around the field on these guys just because it is a good matchup. They play. The thing that's always interesting with the Kings when they're in a good spot is their two best players play the most difficult positions to get to. Sabonis, you get that opportunity cost at center. Same with De'Aaron Fox at point guard. They're both very reasonably priced, though, with $9,900 for Sabonis, $8,200 for Fox. But then the guys that are a little bit weaker, Barnes, Huerter, Murray, are just they have the best, they play the best positions. You have small forward, power forward for Barnes, shooting guard, small forward for Huerter, power forward only for Keegan Murray. That's why he's going to look a little bit worse. But they're all just cheap at the forward spots that typically you're looking to pay down at so that you can afford those good centers and good point guards. So it just makes all five of those guys pretty appealing because the guys that play the most difficult positions are also just really, really good. And then Barnes, Huerter, Murray play positions that typically you're kind of struggling to fill.
And we're adding OKC Houston to the sidebar, or at least we missed that. We can go back to that one. So that's a crazy game. We'll get to that in a second. But what do you want to do with the Spurs? And then we'll circle back and hit on OKC and Houston.
So for the Spurs, a good spot for them as well. Terrible team, obviously, but still, it should just be a really appealing game. Right now, we have ownership coming in here as well. 20% coming to Poeltl at $5,500. I mean, that is a really, really cheap price tag on Jakob Poeltl. He can be difficult to get to sometimes because Zach Collins typically also looks good, but the prices have adjusted, I think, a little bit too much to where now we have Zach Collins at 4,600 and Pirtle's only 5,500. Once again, last game, you got 22 minutes from Pirtle. You got 22 minutes from Collins. They didn't close with either of them, which is interesting. They were losing pretty badly, but you still had a closing lineup before true garbage time where it was Sohan, Johnson, Bates, Diop, McDermott, and Stanley Johnson. That's weird just because, typically you expect 48 minutes combined. But even if you project like 24 minutes for Pirtle and 20 or something for Zach Collins, it's going to make Pirtle look good. He's nearly a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy without Devin Vassell on the floor. Clearly, there is some foul risk for him here. And if he gets in foul trouble, you're getting a little bit more playing time from Collins. But I do like Pirtle at that price tag. Similarly, 5,600 for Trey Jones, one of the cheaper price tags we've seen in a while. He should give you around 30 minutes. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. Keldon Johnson's got about a 31% usage rate without Devin Vassell this year. Pretty much correctly priced in terms of median projection, but you just get a nice ceiling because of that usage. Doug McDermott's pulling 11% ownership at 3K. I get it because he's shooting guard, small forward, and likely to play around 20 minutes. But also, if he's going to be 11% owned, I will find other spots to go to. I expect that one to drop, though, and he's just another large field dart throw.
All right, let's go back to OKC and Houston here. Really interesting spot because on one side, you still have no Kevin Porter. You have no Jalen Green. On the other side, dealing with this OKC team, you have no Lou Dort. Still, he's not even close. And, you're taking his defense off the floor. Who do you think in this game, because we've seen this change up plenty based on matchup, who do you think starts at center? Do you think it ends up being Jalen Williams, or do you think we get Kenrich? Who do you think it's going to be? Because last game, what was it against Golden State? In that Golden State game, it was Kenrich Williams, SGA, Giddey, Jalen Williams, and Aaron Wiggins. And before that, it was Jalen Williams in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and Jalen Williams also started the second half alongside Kenrich. So, I think
ahead
really
of ahead of Aaron Wiggins, right?
Yeah, ahead of Wiggins. Yeah. Really, you could just get a dartboard, put everybody's name on it, and figure it out that way. My guess is that they go with the same starting lineup as last time. I have no idea. And it doesn't matter too much. Like the guys that typically you're going to want to play, are starting. The one exception there is. And even Aaron Wiggins is up to 4,100. So if he starts, he's reasonable, but it's not the same, 3,400 or whatever it was the other day. You've gotten that price up. Jalen Williams, the center, is 3,300. If he starts, you could certainly take a chance on him, but he's still probably only playing 16 to 18 minutes. The guys that you are really interested in, Shea, Giddey, Jalen Williams, without the Y, they're going to start regardless. They're the only guys you can feel relatively confident in their minutes. I am really surprised SGA is only pulling 9% ownership here. I certainly like him more than that. He started out slowly the other day, still ended up having a decent game. But we talked about it. His rates actually go up without Lou Dort. And the reason is, while Lou Dort's not a high usage guy, he's still a 20% usage guy. You replace him with Aaron Wiggins at 14%. There's usage to go around. And so overall this year without Dort on the floor, you have north of a 40% usage rate from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If you put Josh Giddey on the floor with Dort off, you still get a 36.5% usage rate, 1.5 DraftKings points per minute, 1.44 now after being relatively disappointing last game with Giddey on. It goes even higher, the minutes where Giddey's not on the floor. So you can expect at least a slight uptick for SGA without Dort. I'm really surprised he's not getting more ownership in this spot. Giddey at 7,700 is interesting as well. Good matchup. Obviously, there's a lot of good guards on this slate. Isaiah Joe right now is pulling the most ownership. That's been the case on a lot of strategy shows recently, and then it goes away. It's pretty similar to me to the Jalen Noel spot, where I think that he's somewhat interesting in large field tournaments, but I also, if he's going to be 16% owned, wouldn't have interest. He did play about 25 minutes last game, 25 and a half minutes. You can't count on that. On average, he's playing around, 21, 22, but he is a fantasy point per minute guy at 3,700 in a good matchup and certainly could get more minutes. So I like him in tournaments if the ownership comes down. If he's actually going to be, 15, 16% owned, then I'm not super interested.
Do you like SGA more than Morant at the same price, basically?
If Bane's in, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because Morant, none of those guys are getting any ownership. None of them. pretty crazy. SGA is the highest of all of those guys, all 5 of them in the 10K range.
Yeah, that's wild. It must just be a value thing, but I don't know. I mean, there's not, we haven't had any like, sub 4K guys that we really love, but we've had plenty of guys in that 5 to 6K range.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like it's tough to get to 10K guys. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really get why none of them are getting ownership.
Yeah, you could see a change. Like if Wendell Carter's out and then Wagner becomes a prime value, there's a couple spots that could open up a lot of good sub 4K value.
Yeah.
All right. On the Houston side, Şengün, baby. So no Jalen Green, no Kevin Porter. The problem with this one is going to be essentially like Şengün definitely benefits from being a quality playmaker with Porter off the floor. Now you take away the best scorer in Jalen Green. So, that's kind of detrimental, but at the same time, I mean, going up against this OKC front court, Alperen Şengün, the minutes should be there. I get why he's pulling 19% here. Like last game, sure, he wasn't great, but that was against the Cleveland Cavaliers. This guy has legitimate triple-double upside in these spots right now, and there's no denying that.
Yeah, he does. And he missed the last game where both guys were out. He was out too. So,
yeah.
You're getting him here with no Porter and no Green. The offense should just entirely run through Şengün. And then on top of that, we talked about it before. We'd seen increased production recently because of Kevin Porter Jr. being out. Now Green obviously out as well. But you had also been getting increased playing time from Şengün as a result of them cutting one of the backup centers out of their rotation, kind of depending on the game, whether it's Garuba or Fernando. But you can expect, barring foul trouble, mid-30s from Şengün now. And he's played 160 minutes without either one of Porter or Green on the floor. 1.4 DraftKings points per minute, 25.5% usage rate, nearly a 22% assist percentage, 20.5% rebounding percentage. He looks really, really good here, even at a price tag that at first glance, there's, some sticker shock.
Yeah, I like it. But I think Eric Gordon's fine. Just you don't have a lot of shooters out there tonight.
Yeah, he's surprisingly productive without these guys on the floor. And so like right now we have Gordon projected for 10% ownership, 2% chance of being optimal. That's going to change the optimal percentage. Like that doesn't make sense. He's 5,300, small forward. He's played 338 minutes, the second most on the team without Porter or Green out there. He has a 26.8% usage rate. He's averaged 0.97 DraftKings points per minute.
That's good.
Yeah, if you put Şengün on the floor, it's clearly going to drop the sample size here, but hopefully it loads quick enough that I can just sort of see what happens to his rates. But one way or the other, you can expect a bump from Eric Gordon. He's going to have the ball in his hands more as well, without Porter or Green on the floor. It certainly makes him look good at 5,300. If he's going to get half the ownership of Josh Hart, I like kind of splitting the difference and just getting more Eric Gordon. KJ Martin at 5,600, probably playing around 30 minutes. Jayshawn Tate at 4,200. The minutes, kind of who knows where they're going to be, but probably come in around 20. Could get higher, and he is somebody capable of handling the ball. We've seen huge games from him in previous years when they're missing their primary ball handlers. Jabari Smith at 5,600, not a bad point per minute guy either. With Şengün on the floor, 131 minutes for Eric Gordon, 22.8% usage rate, 0.92 DraftKings points per minute, also a 19% assist percentage. So still productive, even though it comes down a little bit when Şengün is out there.
Anybody else from Houston?
I mentioned Jabari Smith. He's played 151 minutes, 0.91 DraftKings points per minute. The price tag on Tari Eason's gotten up to 4,800, so I don't see getting there.
All right, let's talk Toronto and Utah. Obviously still no OG Anunoby, so there's that. Looking at this game though, 230.5 total. Toronto 3-point dogs. I guess we can start where we usually do, at least recently, with Precious Achiuwa. His price still hasn't really come up all that much. You're still looking at a guy who getting the opportunities he does. Even last game, sure, he wasn't dominant, but he's these. I mean, sure, some of these are like poor man's double doubles, but I mean, the double upside, especially on DraftKings where you get the bonus, playing in a Nick Nurse rotation where if Nick Nurse decides he wants to give you minutes, he's going to consistently give you a lot of minutes. He's seen 36, 33, 34 minutes over the last 3 games. There's just I think still a lot to like here at 5,700.
Yeah, I agree. The price tag's slowly creeping up, but it just started at such a low point that there is still some value here. He's pulling 20% ownership, has a 19% chance of being optimal. He played 34 minutes last game. I do expect his production per minute production to come down a bit as the sample size gets larger. He's at 1.13 DraftKings points per minute in the 4 games that he has started this year, 35 minutes per game. With Pascal Siakam on the floor, he's at 0.93 DraftKings points per minute overall this year. So I do think you see that production come down at least somewhat, but just based on the playing time and the salary, even if you call it 0.93 DraftKings points per minute instead of 1.1, if he plays 34 minutes, you're just talking about like a 31.5 fantasy point projection at 5,700, excluding the matchup against Utah. So he's still just going to look good. The rest of the starters look pretty good as well. You're back to just getting big minutes from these guys. Van Vliet comes in at 8,100, 14% ownership there. Scotty Barnes at 7,400 looks fine. 6,300 for Trent looks fine. Siakam's tough to get to because of the position, but 9,400 on DraftKings. That salary's come down a little bit. Only pulling 2% ownership. You do still have that opportunity cost. That the Domantas Sabonis for 500 more is only pulling like 9 to 10% ownership, but clearly still a nice ceiling for him. Chris Boucher, 3,900, pulling 11%. I don't love the 11% ownership, but you did get 24 minutes last game. On average, you're probably getting 20 to 22. It's a pretty appealing Toronto team, just given that Nick Nurse is back to running Nick Nurse rotations.
Yeah, who mentioned that? Vic said, yeah, the name Precious. He's from Nigeria, so I was thinking I was wondering, is that like a popular name for men in Nigeria? I don't know. It just reminds me of that movie about the big girl. Whenever I see it,
about what?
The name Precious. Remember the movie with the big girl?
What are you talking about?
Remember when she falls down the steps? Didn't she fall down the steps?
I don't know because I don't know what you're talking about.
Precious, man.
No,
you don't remember Precious? No,
dude.
You know her if you saw her.
I'm bad with movies. If you tell me the name of the movie, if you just start talking about some chick falling downstairs,
the movie's called Precious. It's called Precious.
The movie is called Precious.
Yes. Trust me, you'd remember. You likely haven't. You would remember. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I've seen it,
but that's what it always reminds me of. Yeah. But yeah, it's called Precious. I swear she tumbled down the steps on one of those scenes. I could be wrong. Anyway, let's talk about the other side of this one with Utah. So you got the Jazz, Lauri Markkanen. I'm wondering, with Markkanen being one of those guys that just very high shot volume, solid usage, but the peripherals are always kind of in flux with a guy like him. Not a bad rebounder, not an elite rebounder, not going to rack up a lot of stocks. How often do you feel comfortable getting to a lot of somebody like him against, say, the Toronto Raptors?
Well, now that he's down to 8,400, a good amount. When he was 9,800, it was pretty difficult. But I mentioned him when we talked about Anthony Edwards before. It had gotten to a price point with Markkanen where he's been fantastic offensively this year, and so he justified having a higher salary than he did at the beginning of the year. But to your point, a 13.9% rebounding percentage is fine, but nothing special. Especially for somebody that's north of 9K, 8% assist percentage isn't doing anything there. You're relying on him as a scorer, which is fine because he has a 66% true shooting percentage on about 26% usage. He's averaging 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. But the big thing now is just that he's back down to $8,400, which makes him a pretty appealing target here. He's getting double-digit ownership. I think he deserves it. You're typically getting 34 to 36 minutes from him as well. So I'm kind of surprised how quickly his price has fallen from where it had gotten up to. But now we're back at a point where I do like playing Lauri Markkanen. Mike Conley, I never like playing, but he is 5,600. He's about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. Should give you around 32 minutes in a competitive game. So, no issue there. It's just not the most exciting thing. Clarkson, Beasley, Vanderbilt, all pulling a bit of ownership as well. Vanderbilt's another one. He's 4,300. He's likely to give you 20 to 22 minutes. He's pulling 9% ownership. There's a path for him in tournaments, but I think really it's just that right now we don't have any value anywhere. So that's why you're seeing some ownership come in there. Beasley at 4,700, back to coming off the bench, still likely to give you 26 to 28 minutes. Clarkson at 6,300, I think is reasonable, should play around 32. But to me, Markkanen is clearly the guy that I want to get to from this team. And then Conley and Clarkson are probably the ones I get to next. Kelly Olynyk is really cheap. He only played 15 minutes last game, though, and it wasn't because of foul trouble. So I assume they're just slowly easing him back in.
Ready to wrap this one up?
Yep.
Hey, what time's your Bet Pro video going to be out? What time do you do it around?
Between 12 and 1.
Okay. Over on the Odd Shopper channel, Adam's Bet Pro video. First week of Bet Pro is free. It's been crushing. It's the NBA player prop tool that is, it's the new craze. Let me tell you. In all seriousness, though, it's awesome. And we got it for NBA. It's all the same guys that create our projections over on the Stokastic side that came together, real brain trust here and put together awesome model for player prop projections for the NBA. So first week is totally free. If you haven't checked it out yet, link is in the description. I can throw it in the chat. First week, totally free. And then listen, the hope here is that you win enough money to where you're like, all right, I can easily cover however many weeks after this because these bets are crushing. But you can sort by a million different things, find all of the best bets like that in an instant. We're hand feeding you these top bets and you can pick and choose which ones you want. So Bet Pro, it's on the Stokastic site too. It's not on Odd Shopper, but all of our content for it, like Adam's video, where you can get some great insight, that's on the Odd Shopper channel. But the link's down there. You want the first week free. NBA Bet Pro, baby. Let's get into it. All right,
Robert Williams will play.
Williams is playing. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to keep this one kind of simple here. Do you like anything from Atlanta? 1.5 point dogs, 231.5 total. Trae Young is probable for this one, expected to return.
Yeah, so I mean, Young being back obviously makes this team just a lot less appealing as a whole. It's another one where you can certainly point to several different guys and say like, oh, this is a good pivot off of whatever popular guy around them. Trae Young pulling 3% ownership, 9,700. Sure. Clint Capella at 6,200, 3% owned when that Precious Achiuwa for 500 less is going to be like 20%. Jakob Poeltl is going to be 20% for 700 less. I don't think Clint Capella is 1 in 7 to beat them. Like I think he's got better chances than that, but you're clearly going to prioritize those guys over Capella across a lot of lineups. Those are the two that, stand out the most. I'll also mention DeAndre Hunter at 4,900, never somebody you're excited to get to, but when Josh Hart for 200 more is 21% owned and DeAndre Hunter is 8, I think you could certainly make the case that, that gap should be smaller as well.
Okay. Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul, of course, look, I shouldn't even have to keep saying this, but some people don't play every day. They're not paying close attention. Devin Booker, Landry Shamet, and Cameron Payne's still out. And who knows when they're going to be back. But with Phoenix, Chris Paul still looks pretty good today in this spot against Atlanta. I mean, I like him at this price point. No problems whatsoever at a guard position where he's going to continue to need to do everything.
Yeah, he's playing well ever since returning too. It really seems like Phoenix did a good job of resting him until he was actually healthy and then bringing him back. You're getting big minutes, played nearly 35 minutes again last game. His salary's not moving either. He's just sitting here at $8,300, pulling 18% ownership, 13% chance of being optimal. Just looks like a good play. He's played 16 games now without Devin Booker. He's averaged 1.18 DraftKings points per minute in 32 minutes per game. Again, he's playing more minutes than that recently. We've gotten a couple games where he plays 38 or 39. On average, I expect 34 to 35, but just another very good point guard option. DeAndre Ayton at 7,800 looks like another good center. You get a bump in usage from him without Devin Booker. You have Chris Paul running point, which is good for Ayton, just, getting him the ball in advantageous situations. So certainly like him as well. And then lower owned guys, you have Cam Johnson at 5,400 coming off of a pretty disappointing game, but we have been seeing upper 20s, low 30s in minutes from him. Typically 6% ownership there. Again, like I don't love Cameron Johnson, but if he's going to be 1/4 the ownership of Josh Hart, I like getting to Cameron Johnson in some of those lineups where other people are playing Hart. So I like, of the low owned guys from Phoenix, Cameron Johnson's my favorite. Chris Paul is my favorite overall.
All right. Hey, you got the deeper dive later. You got live before lock. You got Adam's Bet Pro video on Odd Shopper that he will have out immediately after he finishes watching Precious. And I think that's it, man. You can follow him at Ship My Money DFS, me at Laffy_D. Shout out to, nice work, Jacob. Flawless execution. First time up. Shout out to Jacob for producing this one. We'll see you guys back here very soon on the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock later tonight. Peace.